Did you know that Amazon's most ambitious show might be tanking harder than we think? Wait, hold on. Before you dismiss this as another piece of internet outrage, let's dive into the untold story of viewership data for the Rings of Power and gain insights into what the numbers say, how fans feel, and whether a show is worth your time. You won't want to miss this. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Welcome, my lords, to the White City, where you will learn more about Middle-earth and discover differences and similarities between the Rings of Power show and Tolkien's books, and whether Amazon's show, episode by episode, is worth watching. I'm Philip Dutt, your host, and I'll be joined by Matt Vandevort and Mark Schaefer. I hope you enjoy. All of this episode's content is shown on screens, so Spotify or YouTube are the best places to watch the video. Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to the White City Podcast. During this intermission between Season 2 and Season 3 of The Rings of Power, you'll find us talking about different characters of Middle-earth and artifacts of Middle-earth, along with the Lord of the Rings trilogy movies and the War of the Rohirrim. If you want to listen to our Season 1 review, then go to the beginning of the podcast at any audio platform. Or if you want to listen to our Season 2 review, go to YouTube or an audio platform and search Season 2 review. There will also be new guests on the show with good amounts of Tolkien and lore expertise. So a lot of things to look forward to. Today I have back with me Jared Stonefield. And yeah, hey Jared, what's up?
Hey, good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So yeah, we're going to be sharing the results of the survey I sent out about Rings of Power, kind of a questionnaire just to get people's thoughts. I know Jared took it. I sent it out probably end of January sometime, I think it was. So yeah, got the results now, and I'll show you guys what people picked. And first I wanted to talk about what kind of it's like a rough estimate of some things about the show that I think people have then kind of concluded to say whether or not they thought it was successful. So yeah, for this, this comes from a site called Luminate. Basically, they do data on shows and movies. I think about like views and whatnot. For them, like I'm not even sure when this was taken. I don't know if it was after Season 2 was sent out or if it was during like the first week. Okay, there it is. Friday, August 30th to Thursday, September 5th. Okay, so that's when it was. So that was like the first week or so of when Rings of Power was out. That like I guess Season 2 had a lot of views on it. All right, so this here is the first 4 episodes, which would have been basically the first week that it came out. As you can see, so the red one's the 4th one, and then you can see all these. Those the green, yellow, and kind of, I guess, bluish, pinkish one there. Those are the first 3 that came out. So obviously it makes sense that the first episode would have the most views, and then everything else just kind of goes down from there. I don't know, like, I know exactly what would be a good number of minutes watched compared to other shows, but at the end of, I don't know how that'd be, like 11 days or whatever it is, maybe, or so, maybe 12. Yeah, basically they're all about down to the same amount of minutes watched, below 20 million. Anyways, getting to, no, don't, okay, no, we don't want to allow that. So, you know what? Okay, so getting to I'm gonna show. Let's see here if I can show what the other one was. It's hidden on me. Okay. All right. I got mixed up on which one I was doing there. Okay, so here is this. So all right, so this is something that some people have talked about. Is it's like some people have said, well, like season two has basically lost a ton of money compared to season one, and also a ton of views. And you can tell, like, okay, from this is like the first 11 days basically of each season, and what's interesting is that, okay, in the first like 2 days, you have quite a bit more views on season one than you do on season two. And even if you look at like day 9 farther down at the other peak there, like obviously that's it's higher there too. But what's interesting is that by the time it gets to day 6 for each, they both hit about the same point. And again, like this is data from like one site, so I don't know if this is going to be consistent across other places because certain sites, count minutes or viewers differently. So there isn't necessarily like uh, I guess a solid way of figuring out if this is how everybody's graph is going to look. But either way, it does show a downward trend. What I think is interesting is that season 2 has less variability in it. So you can tell that like season 1 is like day 2, probably 2 episodes. People are watching a lot, and then it's just drops in, I guess in 5 days that would be. It just drops dramatically. I think whenever I looked at it, it was something like a 60% drop. Which, I mean, it's actually even more than that by like day 7. And that's basically the same place where it's at for season 1 or season 2 rather. So like one thing is that I think that it's because the same people are watching it. I think that my assumption is that you have fans, like Lord of the Rings fans, who are watching the show, and eventually just people who aren't fans aren't sticking with it, and so they're dropping off. So season 2 kind of just ends up with people who, at the end of season 1, just continued watching the series. At least that's my assumption on it. And looking at this graph, I think that this graph is also a way of saying that season 2 is better because the variability, or like there's something in statistics called the standard deviation. And basically what it looks like is like an inconsistency or in a high variability in the graph. So obviously in season 1 you have like a really high peak, and then it goes down like really low, and then it comes up high again. Like it's inconsistent, I guess, is the thing. But like season 2, even though there are less viewers or minutes watched, you've got a kind of a more steady graph. So anyways, I think people are more retained on season 2, and that's yeah, that's basically, that's basically all that. Um, did that make any sense? Were you like, oh, I don't get the graphs, or I don't know. What were you thinking, Jared?
No, yeah. I mean, it makes sense to me. Especially with the downward trends. So I mean, you just kind of have to think of this graph in terms of just how you would um think about watching TV normally. So, um the episodes for season 1 when they came out, they would drop at midnight on Friday. And then so that's why you see, especially on day 2, which would have been Saturday, that's when a lot of people would be tuning in to watch it. And then when like that graph counts millions of minutes watched. So it's also counting the fact that like people the next Thursday, if they're tuning in to watch those first episodes for the first time on Thursday, like 6 days after its premiere. So that like the downward trend actually makes a lot of sense to me. Especially with like season one, you have a brand new show, a lot of expectations going in. You have a lot of people checking it out, and then not tuning in for consequential episodes if they decide to they don't like it, or consecutive episodes. I mean, and so yeah, it makes sense. But it is interesting that like season two, while overall definitely lesser, has more of like a more retention, and
Right.
there's just a
Yeah.
much more constant trend of people tuning in for that.
It's kind of one of those things where I think about with YouTube videos is that like it's almost you want to look see as like many people like keep watching as possible
Hmm.
because like if at the end of the if at the end of the episode you only have like 10% of people watching or something. I mean, if you have like 1,000 people viewing it, then that's what 100 people, I guess, who finished it. But if you have like 100 people who finished and you have like 80% retention rate, then it's like
Hmm.
that's awesome. Like I don't know that is it's one of the things that I'd prefer to have like that
Yeah,
than just a
and
great like drop in it. So
yeah, that's a good point because I remember after season one ended, there was a big deal made about retention rates for that season over the course of all 8 episodes. So by the time, like I think it was a few weeks after the finale of season one aired, there was a lot of talk about how only 30% of the people who had started the season actually finished it. Um, and yeah, I mean that's definitely a lower percentage than a lot of other TV shows have had. But I think that's also kind of interesting. Like 25 million viewers watched the season one opener in one day. So like, I mean, it kind of makes sense that that 25 million, that's a huge number for one day. It definitely makes sense that the retention rate is going to necessarily just be so much lower. So yeah, it's very interesting. And what's also interesting too is that it's not like how it used to be with so like when back the 2000s, the old days, um you could literally have you had the Nielson ratings because like an episode would premiere that night, people would sit down in their TVs and they would have their TVs on and they could measure that, and there wasn't really a chance to catch up on episodes unless there was like a rerun. So you had very standard, very consistent uh ratings, or measurable ratings. And so it's kind of very hard to do that nowadays in the streaming world, which is I just find really interesting because also like you just showed recently too that season one became one of the top 10 shows of the week when season two premiered, which like is just very weird to think about that a show like a season episodes from 2 years ago are suddenly back like top in the charts, because that never would have happened. So it just kind of like has to, I don't know. I'm still getting used to looking at streaming statistics, but
yeah, that did seem odd to me because it's like a lot of different people like will talk about the views on the show. Even Amazon has like mentioned about
Mhm.
how they had like so many views on the
Mhm.
second season, I think.
Yep.
But people would comment on like we don't know how they got that number or how they're considering views because I mean, what was it like one? I remember like one guy. I was watching the Nerdrotic thing where he was basically saying that Nielsen said that they were doing it by like household.
Hmm.
They were doing it by like households who had watched.
Yeah, because like there would be like one TV in the
Right.
room or in the house, and you may have like five people gathered around that TV, so you may like count that as just a single view, but like it actually would be times five for that household. So yeah, that's kind of interesting thing too with like streaming is you can have like one TV in a household, but if you have five people with five separate Netflix or Amazon accounts and all five of those people watch it, that counts as five. And it doesn't count as a single household. So yeah, it's a different it's as that's I think that's why they go off of millions of minutes watched is because trying to figure out households versus viewers is like such a crazy thing. And also, I think that millions or billions of minutes watched actually sounds more impressive than like tens of millions of viewers. You can tout and say like, oh, billions of minutes were watched for this show. Yeah.
Right, no, that's true. That's definitely true. Yeah, and yeah, I guess if you like also edit uh edit the minutes to be just like an episode, then that would be an interesting kind of change to
Hmm.
it as well. Um, yeah, so yeah, that's basically like what got me thinking about like what people were saying about the data around the show, and some of the stuff it just kind of seemed that people were giving opinions about the data, and it's like, okay, this is kind of like fitting your
Fitting your
story that
narrative. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, yeah, you already been telling a story about it,
Yeah.
and it kind of fits it. So I was like, all right, well, let's try. Maybe I can try to like figure out some stuff on my own. So that's kind of like where the survey came into it, to try to figure out just people's perspectives on it. So um, yeah, basically just the survey results. I think we should get into next then. Trying to think about how yeah. All right. Um, yeah. So basically, what the survey contained were questions on how did people. You know what? How about this? I'm just gonna maybe I'll just show the survey instead of. Um, Wait, I'll just show the survey first, just so people can actually see what it's like. All right. So yeah, so this is what the form looks like. So this very first question here, I started with so that people could kind of know. All right, even if I didn't watch the show or read the books, I can still like take the survey, essentially. Um, I then put down basically your kind of the most famous books on Lord of the Rings or Middle Earth that you're gonna read, right? If anybody's gonna read any books on Middle Earth first, they're probably gonna read these ones. So that's why I got the the Silmarillion, Hobbit, and the Lord of the Rings books there. And then if they had read any other ones, I thought that would be good to tie those in as well. But there are too many other ones that are kind of just too.
Obscure.
Yes, exactly. Too obscure. It's just, yeah. All right. This here I definitely changed up because I only had probably maybe 4 or 5. I know I definitely had like all of it, none of it, all of season 1, all of season 2. Um, and then when I realized that like I was missing like that people could have watched some of it and not the other one or whatever. So then I tried to make sure that I had a selection there for basically every possible option that I could think of my mind. If someone just watched some of season 1 and some of season 2 and whatnot, so that was that. Enjoying the Rings of Power. This is another one that I did change up as I went along, more towards the end of the survey. I at first just had like yes, no, and didn't watch. But actually, it was one guy who said, "Hey, maybe this is something that you should have more options for." And so after a bit, I was like, you know what, maybe I should add in some more. But I made sure that I kept in yes and no. So that's why I still just added to this instead of making it like a 1 out of 5 or 1 to 5, rating kind of a thing. Um, this one, this is another one I added. I know I added like both seasons are equal, and I think I only had season 1, season 2, and like didn't watch any of the show. So then I added didn't enjoy, watched only season 1 or season 2, and then both seasons are equal. That as I realized, yeah, like yeah, maybe I was just trying to go for something that I was just wanting to see who liked either seasons more instead of just giving like, hey, let's try to give a broader audience. I mean, a broader kind of selection, I guess. So, um, all right. Yeah. So, would you recommend The Rings of Power to a friend? That stayed. That was never changed. Um, if you didn't watch Rings of Power, what were your reasons? Stayed. Yep, that was the whole. What were some of your reactions to Rings of Power if you watched the show? Um, yes. And on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate The Rings of Power compared to other shows? Then the lore accuracy of season 1, lore accuracy of season 2, expectations for season 3, and some things that you think could be done to improve The Rings of Power for season 3. All right. Yeah. So, Jared, what again was your kind of uh um you kind of were thinking that the results would turn out a certain way? I guess
Yeah.
60-40.
Yeah, I kind of feel like 60% might be like not fans of it, and I would say like probably like 40% are. Um, I'm very curious to see just like what the statistics are on this. I'm really glad that there's like a large amount of respondents to the survey because I'm really interested. As like a
Okay.
major fan of the show myself, I'm really interested to see how many people like hate watch it, how many people actually really enjoy watching it. I'm very curious.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is one thing too, is that I've got a lot of comments, and maybe I'll go through some of them to pick out some, but it's kind of hard to quantify those comments
Hmm.
and then show like, oh, this person like said this. There was one comment, and maybe I'll be able to find it. But like, I remember one comment, I was like, wow, this is a really good comment. Like the way that I know, just like the way he was just talking about the show is like, yeah, I didn't like it or whatnot, but I still give credit where credit's due. It was a very balanced comment, which is cool because there are other ones that weren't. All right. So this next here is basically just the tables, like I mean, right, like the graphs, I guess, bar charts, more or less. Yeah. Um, for each question. So the first one is basically I started out with more or less was, did you read any Middle-earth books before watching the show, The Rings of Power? And the reason why I started out with that was because that then leads into the next question. Because I was trying to figure out too is if you what's the difference between reading the books before and like reading the books after? Because there are some people who would probably have read the books after watching the show, and maybe they would have a more positive view of the show. So that was kind of my idea with that. Um, so yeah, so then all right, yeah. So what we got here is the different books that I put on there for people that people have read. So The Hobbit is number one. You can see 175 responses there. Actually, let me see. Are these the same? Okay. It's actually showing that The Hobbit and The Fellowship of the Ring are the same number of responses. So that's kind of interesting. But because you can choose, you know, any book you want to and so many number of books, that doesn't mean that every person who read The Hobbit read The Fellowship or, vice versa. Um, then it goes Two Towers, Return of the King, Silmarillion, and other Middle Earth books. Does that kind of make sense to you, Jared? That would be like the
Oh yeah.
progression?
Oh yeah, especially with like The Hobbit and The Fellowship of the Ring being the top ones. Yeah, that makes sense
Yeah.
to me. I'm actually surprised that there's people who read so many other
Yeah.
ones outside the Silmarillion and the others. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so another thing to say about the way I actually distributed the petition the survey is that I did mostly send it to like Rings of Power or Lord of the Rings, Tolkien groups.
Hmm.
And so because of that, I didn't get entirely like everyone who I kind of would want to get in a sense because now like we're just looking at basically for the most part people who are pretty big fans
Hmm.
of the show essentially. So yeah, so I know that like so like for one instance here like of course like there's at on the left there like never watched the show or read the books like yeah, it's like no, like there's you either have like watched the show or read the books, essentially.
Hmm.
Um, so that's just it's just yeah, interesting. Interesting. Nobody picked that one, although I had the option available. All right, so on this part, I tried to group some of the tables I guess that were similar. So, did you enjoy Rings of Power? And here is where I think that this table would have looked extremely different. So for about I'm gonna say over half the time of the form, I had yes, no, and didn't watch as the only options. Um, and I mean as it went along, even after I added these three, which were for the most part a little and more or less, even when I added these three, like there were still selections for yes and no.
Hmm.
So there were people who were definitely like, no, I did not like any of this, or yes, 100%, I did enjoy it. Um, so recommending it to a friend, this one I didn't change at all. So it was yes and no, and I think it'll be interesting because I'll talk about things being correlated too. It's interesting that this chart right here, it says no 92 responses for no. And what is that? 86 for
Hmm.
yes. Now, also granted, um it would be a little difficult to pull out this variable and just see who I mean we can look at a chart later, but um these responses for didn't watch probably went into wouldn't recommend.
Mm.
Because from what I remember seeing is that most people who didn't watch are basically like, I heard, my friends talking about it, or I watched reviews, and I just figured that it wasn't worth watching.
Mm.
Or even more so, like, it doesn't seem like it's in Tolkien's world, and they're just gonna, like, completely smash the lore. It's, that kind of a thing. Um, so, which season of Rings of Power did you enjoy more? So, I had first off season 1 and season 2. How would you say here? Yeah, so season 2 and season 1. Where is it at? Yeah. I had at first just those two on here. Um, so so basically most people were saying season 2, even if they had a negative take, they're still saying that like season 2 was better. And then I gave options of only watch season 1, only and like only watch season 2 somewhere. Oh yeah, there's like one guy who only watched season 2. That's funny. But yes, and then um since these other ones were added later on, there aren't as many. So I wonder if this would have sized down some and been a little bit more distributed. I would like to think that still season 2 would be selected because like didn't watch any of the show. I mean, I think I had that on anyways. And then didn't enjoy any of the show as one that I put on later. So this one, I'm gonna say probably went with like I don't know, one or two of those. So yeah, but either way, I think that season 2 still would be still up there.
Mhm.
So here is wow. I really kind of I tried to expand this one a lot because um, it basically was here. I'm gonna make changes to that one, make it look better so that we can actually see it better. Yeah, it'll be fine. All right. So yeah, most people watched all the show. That's that's I think pretty. Yeah, that's pretty. That's pretty much. That's pretty much it for all this. Um, yeah, and then there are just basically different variations of basically like watch some of season 1 and all of season 2, or yeah, it's like for this would be like some of season 2 and all of season 2. Yeah, that's interesting. It's like if somebody started watching season 1, they were they're most likely going to watch season 2, I think. And all right, so how would you rate The Rings of Power compared to other shows? So the one that had the most selections is 4. So most people selected 4 out of 5. And again, this was not edited at all throughout the survey's length. So that was mostly 4, and then behind it was 1. Was 1 out of 5. And then the least amount was 5. So it is very interesting how that turned out.
Mhm.
And then expectations for the third season, I thought would be like the closest thing to what the rating of The Rings of Power to other shows might be. And I mean, what is interesting is that 1 out of 5 was the most selected for this. But it's
Immediately
interesting.
followed
Everybody's like,
by 5 out of 5.
yes, that is true.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
that
so,
is crazy.
it's such opposite ends of the spectrum right next to each other. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And also, it's interesting that more people said that their expectation for season 3 is 5 out of 5 than people who voted 5 out of 5 for the Rings of Power compared to other shows. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but
And then you have,
I mean,
yeah, no, that's fascinating. Sorry, yeah, I'm just like
because
engrossed in this.
yeah, because one was yeah, because like with expectation for 3 had 74 um
74 ones,
responses.
yeah.
Yeah, and then you had like 45 in the other one. So you kind of wonder why people would have just been like, I don't really have expectations. I have low expectations going into it, so that no matter what it is, it's it might I might enjoy it more, or whatever kind of a thing.
Hmm.
Yeah, that is interesting. All right, so of 1 to 5, how would you rate the lore accuracy of season 2 and then season 1? So Season 2 is over here, and it is a 1. Most people, 56 responses, gave it a 1. 43 gave it a 4. Alright, what do we got here? Then we have same thing, very similar with 68. What is this? Alright, so 68 for season 1 said it was a 1 out of 5 on the lore. Which is higher than season 2. The next one for season 1 is 3 out of 5. 46 responses. Wait. Oh, interesting. And then this is 43 responses with a 4 out of 5 for season 2. And what is that? 2 out of 5 and 3 out of 5. And then 2 and then 4 here on season 1. And there was like 1 response for 5 out of 5 for season 1. That's interesting. And is this 5 out of 5 there too? Yeah, and then there were like 3 responses for 5 out of 5. I'm thinking those people like probably just read the Hobbit book. I could be wrong. uh yeah. Yes, that is interesting how that was set up. Definitely people thought that the lore was better in season 2.
Hmm.
Um
I will
all
say,
right, so
as
that
someone
yeah.
who defends the show quite habitually, I am 1 out of 5 for accuracy to the lore is it's a bold statement. I'll say because
Oh,
and
yeah.
if someone said to me that like it's
Jared's
one out of
ready to give
five on a
some
scale of accuracy, I would expect like it to have nothing to do with the original source material. And I definitely think like at least the major beats, I would say definitely align. So I think 1 out of 5 is slightly extreme there. I understand the gripes with the lore accuracy. I get it, but 1 out of 5 is a little bit of an overreaction, I would say personally.
interesting. Yeah, because um yeah, so you think that it'd be more like a at least a 3 or around there or?
Yeah, I mean, here's also the problem though. Like for example, with season one, um, it is less lore accurate, but that's also because a lot of season one just didn't have any lore that it was necessarily basing itself off of. Like there wasn't specific parts of the Silmarillion or unfinished tales that they were adapting off of yet because they were building their storylines. Um, so it's kind of hard to like think about how you'd measure lore accuracy in that term, which is just very interesting to think about. Um, so it depends on like what people thought of like when they meant like lore accuracy, maybe. Because if you go by, um, did this specific event or did these events in season one match events that happened in the books? Well, no, because a lot of the things didn't happen, but a lot of the major themes and the characters and where and the locations were pulled right out of the lore. Season two, you actually start to have the story going directly along beat for beat with things that did happen in the Silmarillion, which I think also helps with its lore accuracy rating. Which I'm just very interested by like the responses, and I'm
Yeah.
interested in like what people thought of specifically about lore accuracy.
Yeah. Right. So, the um let's move to this here. Um so I'm going to show comments, and I'm not really sure like which columns to show and which columns to not show. All right. Um I'm at least gonna go by did you enjoy? And then we're gonna go down and see. Here are if you watch the show. Uh, so, so all right. One thing is on this here, I had an idea of who was responding from where because I would post it somewhere and then I would get responses. I posted it to a survey site because you can like post your survey and then other people post theirs and then you respond to each other's and that's how you get uh, survey results, which is very interesting. But like this guy here, casual viewer. Anyways, I just wanted to say I think that he only read. Uh, okay, he read the Two Towers and the Return of the King. Interesting selection. But yeah. So let's see here. Um, so this guy here.
I
what
love
was
that
he
it's
saying?
fine. The one person that
Yeah,
just said it's fine.
yeah.
That's great.
Um, see, I'm gonna try to just get it over a little bit more. There we go. Um, and okay. So, um, oh, a legend that has been passed down, and legends in real life go through all kinds of alterations. So, RIP doesn't bother me as much in my point of view. They are the alterations that come from retellings of ancient story. I'm thoroughly enjoying it and can't wait until season 3. That's interesting. Interesting thing. Statement. Um, okay, I'm going to. Not as much of a tragedy as people make it out to be. Starts awkward and doesn't stick to the end of the seat landing super well. All right, let's hear some negative. Give me some negative things here. Um, I loved it. Okay. Let's see. No, 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 no. It's an abomination. Bad characterizations, worse writing. They were only interested in pushing their own messages and corrupting great work. They knew no one would want to watch the original series they could make. Um, all right, let's see. Horrible writing. I think that if I would take out a few things, it would be horrible writing and bad acting.
Hmm.
Is what a lot of these people would say. Who are negative. Time compression. This guy had a problem with time compression. Um, Absolute trash. Just didn't really have much to say. No. Embarrassing. Most expensive TV show ever made. Uh, Show is boring. Character plots and dialogues were just very poorly written. The acting betrayal of characters like Gil-galad, Celebrimbor, Sauron, and Galadriel, etc. is very poor too. I was very excited about the show, but it was a great disappointment. Okay, let's see here. Let's see if we can find. Um, this is a long one. All right, now I gotta go back this way. All right, here this guy says, "I'm no lore purist, nor I'm an anal if it comes to adaptations, because some liberties and changes are simply needed when adapting everything. Um, Immersive and coercive, okay. The show effing sucks every way. The soundtrack, I guess you thought was good. Um, Barely any scene that works. Not saying good or great, just works. The writers rely on prophecies. Two trees shedding their leaves. Change people's minds. Um, yes, yes. All right. There was one guy who actually gave me out like a bullet point list of like pros and cons he had, which is kind of cool. Um, no resonance with the books. So like one thing, what again, like I do I tend to push back against the negative ones because it's something where um it's like something where people are talking about bad writing and bad acting, and I guess like what do I know about bad writing or bad acting? So for me to, to say, "Oh, I think that this guy wasn't like a good actor or wasn't, compelling or something." It's like, "All right, well, maybe there would be some good actors out there that you just wouldn't think they're good actors, but still, very slow paced. The dialogue in season one, low emotional resonance, plot holes, production budget. Sauron's character in season two, Elrond's character. Oh, well, okay, so you say there were strengths. Interesting. So that's interesting because I put down something for the most part. Um, okay, so I have a friend who also put down for the most part, and he has like the longest. Maybe it's not here. Oh, I don't know, but he had like the longest. I knew he had just like just submitted it, and it was like the longest written uh, comment. So if they didn't watch the show on this one, that was whatever. Okay, let's go over to those. All right, this is gonna take longer than I was thinking. So hopefully you guys stick with me on this if you're really interested in seeing what people said. Um, so yeah, like for instance, this guy like feedback from friends, and he basically didn't think it was worth watching because of that. It hasn't shown it respected the source material. Rather than writing a source that works with the source material, writing a story that works with the source material. They don't care about opinions of fans of Tolkien's work. That um, I don't know. That could be true or not. But uh, heard it wasn't good. Um, Read books on the Inklings when I was a teenager. Had no interest in watching a media company beat the original story to death for sex appeal. And I'm like, bro, I don't know where you got the sex appeal thing
I'm
idea,
sorry, I
but
have to laugh at that.
that's that's like I yeah, I it's just interesting. It's like, bro, you need to look lower into the show. I started a petition to actually keep this out of there. Just a side note, and it's not in there. Yeah, so not a whole lot I didn't watches.
Mhm.
Was interesting. I almost feel like that people who are Lord of the Rings fans just have this inkling that they have to watch it.
Mm.
And these people who are even going to give it a low rating or don't like it, a lot of them are going to watch season 3, I think. But I could be wrong. Uh, Reduce the number of storylines and keep out the hobbits. Um, Make the world not look like cheap set pieces with plastic armor. All right. Well, yes, that's for season 3 actually. Oh, huh. Oh well. Um, what's the other ones here? I thought are these not the? Okay, so if you watch the show, if you didn't watch the show, where is if you didn't watch the show? Maybe I did look at that one. If you watch the show. Right here should be if you didn't watch the show. If you didn't watch the show. Okay, well, maybe that was the one we were looking at. Wait, wait. Are there such thing as black elves? Jared?
Um, from the ones that we've seen in Tolkien's original work, no. Um,
Okay.
is it possible that there were black elves? I would say so. Does it bother me? Not really.
Yeah, I mean, he's gone now, right? Oh, hello, sir. We have a book on this too. So I think I'm not really sure exactly how, but I there could be a way of me posting these comments as well for people to see. Um, I, you know, without just changing what's actually on here as responses, because there is that possibility to actually change the response, but I never did that. Okay, well that is basically what um, what we got going for um, the survey, kind of just results side of things, um, in a sense. So I one thing I would have liked was to extrapolate that graph that was from the Luminate data, just to see, like, it would have been cool to see. All right, would they have ended like at the same points at the end of each season?
Hmm.
And I kind of would think that maybe they would have, especially for how some, like, the, because there was some um, similarity in how the graphs
Mhm.
were, like, how at the highs and lows. Um, so I'm going to show something that is more of a statistics thing, but I was able to, what I did basically, and maybe I will just show you that here, is I basically set up a ranking or like numbering system for each response or selection for each question. And of course, I tried to give a best idea of how that would work, but um, I guess we'll see. All right, this is it. Here we go. All right. So there's something in statistics called a correlation, and what I'm trying to show here is if there were any similarities between, um, for instance, how many books somebody read compared to like their enjoyment of the show, or compared to, you know, the lore accuracy and things like that. So, um, let me try to get this in a little bit closer. All right. So basically, it's the idea of a correlation is if one thing increases in a number, does that other thing increase in a number as well? So, for instance, you could have height and weight. So, if somebody is tall, that's probably going to mean that they also weigh more than somebody else. So, um, so I want to show. Let's just show real quick, basically, for what I did on the books that were that I put out there for people to read. So basically, you had all six selections here. I made The Hobbit 1, Fellowship Ring 2, Two Towers 3, Return of the King 4, Silmarillion 5, and other books 6. And I used it as basically kind of like a value system, um, because whenever people had their selections here, then this here adds up everything that's over here, essentially. So, for instance, this person read or basically selected every choice here. So if you selected every choice, this became 21. A value of 21. Um, because I knew that like if you read the Silmarillion, that probably means that like you're dedicated and you're gonna, you know, you're probably gonna read some of the other ones first before that one too. So that's kind of like the way I was ranking things, and as you can see, it just kind of goes through like that. A lot of people read every book, and that person read everything. There's not the Silmarillion or any other oddball ones. That person looks like he's like just reading them, maybe. Yeah. So, and I kind of did the same thing for the other ones, but this was easy for recommending it to a friend because it was yes and no. So 0 and 1. That's basically what that is. It's kind of a classic like statistic thing. Um, for this is just based on like what parts of the show you read. I like a 9 was given if you read all of it, and then none of it, and then that's kind of like just went through the ranking there. It didn't really matter how else it was set up. And so basically on this one I just said if you watched all of it, then the value 9 was here. If you watched none of it, then you got value of 1. And then that was just basically how the selection went went down there for the different options. Pretty much the same thing here. I put 0 for didn't watch because it kind of didn't affect. It didn't really have a part to play in whether or not you enjoyed it. How many Middle Earth books before watching? And this was basically, if you watched the books before or not, same kind of a thing. Selections were given that way. Yeah. So, all right. Now let me get back to it. What did I do there? Okay, fine. We're good. All right. Now on to like this correlation thing. So this is interesting, right? So how many of these Millith books have you read? And comparing that to the lore accuracy. All right, so remember, for lore accuracy, it was 1 for very little lore accuracy, and then 5 for like very close. All right, and then for books, read, it was if it was basically if you had read the more ancillary works, that was going to give you a higher number, and that kind of the assumption then is also that the addition of all of those would give you a higher value. So that higher value would be compared to the low value of the lore. So if you had a so basically if people who read all of the books and they went and they basically in this situation said that there was a low lore most of the time. So that's why this is negative, and it's actually one of the higher like negative values there, which is interesting. So that basically means that if people read more books, then they said that the lore accuracy was less. That's basically where that was going to. Now, that's interesting. These two also, well, this one here is a high negative number as well. But one thing I wanted to also say is it's interesting with how the rating system went. These ones that are red are basically just looking at scale of 1 to 5. And on a scale of 1 to 5, for instance, for like the lore accuracy, even, um, and how you would compare it to other shows, it was like it would come out very similar to how people would recommend the show to a friend. So, for instance, like if they, uh, um, so in this instance, it was like yes or no, right? So it was either 0 or 1. So one was like basically the high value for for yes. So basically, if somebody said that they liked the lore, that also was a high value. If they thought the lore was accurate, that's also a high value. So they're very closely correlated to if somebody thought that the lore was accurate, that also I think would then be similar to if somebody enjoyed the show as well. Um, yeah. So, anyways, have any thoughts on that,
Yeah, no,
Jared?
it's pretty interesting. Um, yeah, I can definitely see like the reading the more Middle Earth books because what's interesting is like with the lore accuracy, it's only if you read the Silmarillion or like the Unfinished Tales that you actually get into like the meat of the lore that Rings of Power is based on. So, yeah, it's definitely interesting that like if you're going to read them, you're going to have much stronger opinions about the lore accuracy as compared to someone who's maybe just like read The Hobbit, who, I mean, the stuff about the Rings of Power is only very vaguely hinted in that or in Lord of the Rings. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, that is. That's pretty much what I was wanting to show you guys and talk about. So yeah, it's just kind of it is interesting to try to get and hear people's opinions. Um, and so interesting to see how season 3 goes. I kind of hope that it definitely would do well, but um, but I know other people are. I think in looking at a lot of the expectations for or what they think could be improved for like season 3. Um, people had a pretty low expectations on a lot of things, and they didn't think people who had a negative take on things didn't think that much could be
Mm.
changed. They thought it was going to be the same going forward, unless they decided to like fire everybody and then change things around. And I think that a lot of people though would say like, "Hey, stick to the lore, stick to the story, and just do that." And we think that it would go well. So, but yeah, thanks for Jared for coming on, and
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me, man.
yeah, for sure. And thanks everybody for tuning in, and catch us for our next episode coming out next week. Thanks for visiting the White City. Before you leave, please subscribe to our podcast and check us out at thewhitecitypodcast.com. We're on YouTube or Facebook under the tag @thewhitecitypodcast.